Hey, welcome back to the Club Junkie podcast, everybody. Hopefully, you're having a great week. We're halfway through, as we always are when I'm loading my podcast here. So, halfway through the week, it's Wednesday, and it's kind of it's been an interesting couple weeks. It's been absolutely freezing cold up here in Detroit. I live in the suburbs, and we just got hit like last night, or well, 2 nights ago, Monday night, with a bunch of snow. So there was like 2 inches of snow I had to shovel yesterday, and I haven't been able to get out to the range because it's been like 8 degrees in the morning. And the range I go to out in Royal Oak, which is really nice, and it has heaters and all that. The heaters at 8 degrees don't do a ton, and it's tough to swing clubs when it's 8 degrees out and you got 25 layers on to stay warm and all that. So unfortunately, I haven't got out to hit a bunch of new stuff, which I have some new stuff sitting in the basement, which is killing me that I have a couple things here and I just haven't been able to actually get out and hit them yet. So that's been kind of a bummer. So today I'm going to go through kind of something I think about on a regular basis, and I think a lot of people who have the same issues I do in terms of being a club junkie, or just a person who's just into clubs. I think it's an issue that all of us have, and what it is basically I sit there and I kind of imagine what combinations of shafts and club heads that I could play and what would work well, and it's just like a constant thought. And I guess when you have a whole wall of shafts and access to a lot of clubs like that, that's just something there. But I used to do it before that as well. But I would sit there and kind of think of like, all right, this head kind of plays this way. What shaft do I think would pair up well with it, and all that. And it's been something I've been doing, lately, just because it's been crappy out and I haven't been able to hit a ton of stuff and all that. So, it's a show this week that I'm going to go through some of the new 2021 driver heads and stuff that I think, combo wise of stuff I've hit, of shaft head combos that I think are really going to work well, and I can't wait to test more that I haven't yet. I maybe hit a couple of these combos so far, but not a lot. I just haven't had enough time on the range to kind of really bring like the whole the whole row of shafts and all that and all the heads out. So I'll get there. It's going to happen. Just not there yet. But yeah, so I wanted to kind of just talk about some of the head and shaft combinations that I'm thinking about that I think are going to work well for certain heads. And honestly, realistically, there's probably one shaft that'll probably work with a couple heads. But to make it more fun, I kind of made my list with a different shaft for every different head. So the Sim and the Sim Max or whatever, like some of those, I think that hey, one shaft may work really well with both, or with multiple heads, whether it's different brands. But I said, to make it interesting, to make it fun, let's go ahead and actually make it where every head has its own shaft in a sense. And I'll give you a little explanation of why I think it's going to work well for me. Now, this is for me. I mean, for you guys, it may be different because you may hit the ball either higher or lower than me, or you may fight. You may slice it instead of hook it or whatever. But this is kind of where I'm coming from. So if you're kind of thinking about the same thing, maybe it'll spark a little interest or thought there. But these are kind of the ideas I had for for some driver combos that I think will work. And like I said, everybody kind of has those little thoughts of you kind of know what shafts work for you, or or how different shafts play for your swing. And I basically went through and looked at what shafts launch higher. I put them in lower launching heads, and the higher launching heads put lower launching shafts, and different things like that. So I'm going to go through pretty much most of them. The only thing I'm not going to hit on, because as you guys know, I haven't hit TSI 2 or 3, so those aren't on my list. And I'm trying to think of anything else. Those are probably the two main ones that I haven't hit. Everything else is pretty much on here for the most part. Like Epic Max, I really liked Epic Max LS better, so I kind of left Epic Max off. And the same thing with like Ping G425 SFT. I kind of already hooked the ball, so I don't think I need a more draw biased driver. So stuff like that I left off. Same thing like the Sim2 Max draw. Those things, like I said, that just aren't drivers that I'm probably going to play. I just kind of left those off the list. So I also realized that doing my little YouTube thing here, I didn't turn on all my lights. So there we go. I'm up and running. It's been a rough go here. I'm not 100% with it, but so we're gonna go through, and if you've got any questions on these, or you think you've got a cool idea or thought of a good combination, hit me up on Instagram at Club Junkie Pod, and we can chat about it. I love chatting with you guys there, and thank you everybody who always puts in questions every week, and also people who just put in questions anyway and send me stuff about the clubs they're hitting. I always enjoy chatting it up with you guys. So thank you very much for following. And I know it's not a huge achievement for most people, but I've crossed over the 2,000 follower mark, which is pretty good for my little lowly podcast. But I appreciate everybody following along, whether you're listening to the podcast, watching this thing on YouTube, or hanging out on Instagram with me. So appreciate everybody for all the follows and listens and taking time out of your busy day with your life and family, whatever, and chatting golf and hanging out with me a little bit. So really appreciate that. Thank you for it. So let's get going. Let's start on some of these drivers that I think would be some kind of a cool combos. So the first one I'm going to start with is going to be the Taylormade Sim2. I really like Sim2 and Sim2 Max. I think they're improvements over last year's. Maybe not in terms of outrageously faster ball speeds or anything, but I think the miss hits are better on Sim2, especially Sim2 Max. I think ball speed on those miss hits and the stability on those is much better. And for Sim2, I think I would just go Ventus Blue 6X, which is a shaft that I played a lot last year. I played it a lot in my Sim Max, but I think that head, since it is kind of a flatter ball flight, I don't need anything lower. So Ventus black would be probably too low. I wouldn't hit it high enough. I think Ventus Blue would be a good combo. It would add some stability to that head because slight low heel, slightly high toe shots. They can go offline a little more than Max, so I think adding Ventus Blue, that's a little more stable. That's going to add a little more forgiveness, help hit it a little straighter, and I think overall a good combo. Like I said, the kind of the mid-launch low spin. The only thing I worry about that is Sim2 is pretty low spin. Ventus Blue for me has been fairly low spin. That could be a little lower spin than I'd like, but I think overall the performance benefits of Blue match up with Sim2 really well. And that'd probably be the first combo there that I would go out and hit, or in terms of my list. There's no real order to this. It's not number one through anything. It's just as I kind of put the heads in here, I just slapped a shaft in. But I think Ventus Blue would be a great match for Sim2, and I think a lot of you are probably either going to be playing that combo or have played last year's Sim with Ventus Blue. And we're talking the Velo Core version, not the version that was that comes stock in it. I'm talking the Velo Core version, and I think just like I said, the stability of that shaft, the consistency of that shaft match with that Sim2 head, I think adds a little bit, helps kind of with those misses, while still on center strikes is going to give you that great kind of mid to mid high launch with pretty low spin. So Sim2 would be with Ventus Blue, I think is going to be a good combo. I think we're going to see a lot of people online playing that combo because I think it's just going to be, overall, it's going to fit a lot of players. So that's my first one there that I think is going to be pretty solid. And then for me, I think it would be a good matchup. And again, we will try these things as the year goes on. So now Sim2 Max is the head that out of the two I'd probably play, or I will play. Let's put it that way. If I play a Taylormade head, it's going to be Sim2 Max. I'm probably not going to play Sim2 just because I like a little bit more forgiveness, and I like the slightly higher launch of the Max head. And last year I played Sim Max. This year I think I would play Sim2 Max as well. It's just it's just a head I think that's more my game. Now for this one here, I think I could have put Ventus Blue in here as well. This is just one of those heads where I think but it does launch a little higher than Max, so making sure I stick with something that's mid-launch. It does spin a little more, so something that's a little lower spin. So again, Ventus Blue I think could have went in either with these heads, and then vice versa. I think what I did for this one is Sim2 Max with the Mitsubishi Diamana ZF60TX, and I know it says TX, but that's just the X Flex. They only make TX, so I'm not looking to go 2 or X, but this is the only shaft on my list that I actually really haven't hit yet. But I really like the idea of it. Again, out of the Diamana stuff for that gen, it's got the stiffest handle section. It's kind of that mid-launch, low spin. I think that mixed with that Max head is really good. I mean, like I said, the stiff handle section for me is always a plus. The Max head is definitely a little more forgiving, but again, it does spin a little more than the Sim2. So putting that low spin ZF shaft in that Max, I think would really equal those things out. And, again, keeping that kind of mid-launch. I don't need to hit it any lower, really. I want to kind of maintain what that Sim2 Max does. So I think the ZF would be a very good combo with that Sim2 Max. It's just Like I said, a little less spin, but keeping the launch the same. And the same thing from everything I've heard about that shaft. It's again pretty stable. It's got a really smooth Diamond feel, so I think that combination there would be really good. So Sim2 Max there, and I do have a Sim2 Max head coming, so I will be for sure having that head in my stable. But I think that'd be a great combo there for me at least. Sim2 Max, Diamond ZF60TX, which like I said would be a great thing. I mean, it's kind of that, what is it? I think Justin Thomas played that shaft for a little while, but just overall, I think a really good combo for that head. And like I said, I think those two shafts you could flip between. I think you could go Sim2 with the ZF. I think you could go Max with the Ventus Blue. I think either one. But like I said, to keep things, different shaft, different head, this is the kind of the route I went there. So those are the two Taylormade ones. And I think, again, combo-wise for me, it'd be great. Like I said, your guys' mileage may differ. You may hit Sim Max or Sim2 Max much higher, and something like a Ventus Black or like a Tensei AV white would fit better in there for you. But for me, I think those two mid launchers will be good. There's only I think like one really low launch shaft on here. There's two. I think there's two low launch shafts on here. Other than that, pretty much everything is pretty mid to mid low. And again, like if you guys have been following me for a little bit here, you kind of know I don't go chasing the lowest launch and lowest spin shafts out there. So it's just not the way I swing it. But yeah, so let's we'll go into next and do the two Callaway heads. So like I said, I'm going to skip on Epic Max. I don't like the shut face. It's a little more draw biased. I already hit it left. And my miss is club path is from out to in, shut face dead left. So adding Epic Max in there is not really, I don't think it's too beneficial for me. So I went, the first one will go Epic Max LS, which I probably like the most out of the two remaining Callaway heads. I probably hit that one the best. It's hard though, because I've hit speed really well in the range, but I know getting out to the course, we could see different things there because the course is always, it's the true proving ground. But the Max LS I really like. That one there, again, kind of a higher, a little higher than mid. It's a mid-high launch for me, but it seems to be pretty flat. I don't think so. It's a really, really spinny head. Ball speed seems really good, and honestly, the forgiveness is pretty solid there. So definitely a head I could see making it into the bag at some point. And for this one here, I kind of went with Project X Hazardous Smoke RDX Blue, because that for me, as I've hit it, has kind of been that mid-launch shaft. I mean, I would say, that and Ventus Blue, very similar launches. A little different feel between the two, but I think that Max LS head, like I said, being kind of a true mid-launch, it'll bring that flight down just a smidge. It's a lower spinning head, so, or lower spinning shaft, so, if you do have that slight, fade shot, or you kind of open the face a little bit and miss it a touch right, you're still going to keep some of that spin down. And I think, the stiff handle section in that RDX Blue is definitely going to help me kind of keep it, keep it in play and keep it more consistent. And, like I said, overall a good feeling shaft. The hazardous line to me has always been that line that played awesome, but it never really felt the best. And the RDX Blue stuff or the RDX Black and Blue, both are definitely more or smoother feeling driver shafts than previous hazard stuff. I know the smoke overall has been better, but the RDX stuff is really good. So I think RDX Blue there. I don't think I'd need to go black. I don't think that head launches that high where I'd need to go black. I think blue is a good fit there, because I don't want to lose all the height and all the trajectory off that head. So yeah, Epic Max LS with the Hazardous Smoke RDX Blue would be for the Epic Max LS. I think that'd be a really good combo. So. And then there's the Epic Speed. So the Epic Speed, if you've seen it, is definitely the smallest of the three heads. When you set it down, it definitely looks tiny. It's got the Sub-Zero shape where it's a little more rounded, but it definitely looks small. It's got a deep face. I think it's still 460 cc's, but it just doesn't have that big footprint that you kind of that I like, that I feel like I can kind of hit it anywhere. But the Epic Speed, again, is kind of that for me, it was kind of mid-launching. It was definitely lower than Max LS. But it's not as low as, say, Sim2 or, like Rad Speed, which is probably the lowest, head that I've hit, lowest launching head that I've hit. So it's kind of, a true mid-launch. And, that one there, it definitely has, I wouldn't say it's anti-left, but it goes pretty straight. It doesn't really want to turn over very easy, which is, good for me. And I like the speed. I'm just worried long-term out on the course, if I'm not swinging well one day, is it forgiving enough for my game. So that's the only worry I have. I'm definitely going to take it out to the course and try it, but that's the only kind of worry I have about it. Ball speed on it and all that's good, and that's what I look at. So the ball speed on it's really good. It seems to have that, you know, a pretty good mid launch and is pretty neutral. So for this, I'm going Graphite Design Tour AD HD6X. So what I found with the HD is it's kind of a, you know, I'll call it mid to slightly mid-high launch. It's a little higher than Vintage Blue, RDX Blue. It's just a little higher than that. But it's a really a shaft that really kicks at impact, and as you swing it, I mean, it really does feel like it's adding some ball speed and really kind of helping propel that ball forward faster. But it also has some really good control to it. It's really consistent. It's got a fairly stiff handle section. It is a little easier to turn over than, say, Ventus Blue or RDX Blue. So for that, I think it works well with the speed, because the speed is pretty neutral. Like I said, I wouldn't call it fade bias, but I'd call it really neutral, and adding just a hair of draw to gain maybe a little bit of ball speed, I think would be a good compromise there. And it would probably elevate the trajectory just a little bit and put it, you know, just slightly behind the Max LS. But overall, I think that HD6 would work really well with the speed head. Like I said, I mean, if you're somebody who kind of fights the ball going a little right, I think this would actually, you know, work pretty well, because it is an easier shaft to turn over without being crazy left. You know, I mean, it's not super soft or anything, but I think this would be a good combo with that head and really add, like I said, the feeling of adding a little ball speed and adding a little heat to that driver. So HD6X in the Epic Speed, which, you know, like I said, going through this list as I was making it, it kind of got me excited to want to hit some of these shafts and hit some of these combos. So as soon as it's warm enough and I can get out and hit some balls and get on the range, I will definitely be bringing, you know, the plethora of shafts in the staff bag along with all these driver heads. So, but yeah, that's my combo for Epic Speed, which, you know, like I said, I'm kind of excited to try that. So, and these I'm going based off all basically 10.5 heads, because that's what I usually play. And if something launches really high, like getting into the next driver, I might open it up and take a little loft off it just to open the face up a touch. But, you know, for the higher launching drivers, I think I'd do everything in a 10.5 here, and maybe just slightly adjust the adapter in some of the heads if you know, if I needed to, in terms of maybe slightly opening the face or taking a little loft off it. But so the next one would be Ping G425 Max, which, you know, I think is going to be a big hit with a lot of players. I think you're going to see, you know, I know it's the max head, it's the most stable, it's the kind of the biggest one, but I think you're going to see everybody from beginners down to scratch players playing this head. I think it's going to be, I think you're going to see some guys on tour playing. I mean, remember when Finau was playing the G400 Max? So I think you're going to see this in a lot of different bags. Now, this one here, it definitely launches high, and it definitely wants to go a little left, and it's also a really heavy head. I haven't slapped it on a scale yet. When I get it back, I will definitely weigh it. But I did notice that it's definitely head heavy. Like, the head has some mass to it. And for this one here, I basically chose the Mitsubishi Tensei AV Raw Orange 65X. And the orange for me, I know that they kind of list orange as mid-launch. To me, I thought orange was kind of the boardiest feel out of all of them. Like, it had the, you know, overall profile the stiffest. Like, I felt white was a little more active in terms of, you know, it felt, you know, just a hair softer. It loaded a little easier. To me, orange was just the boardiest one. It was the hardest to load. It definitely didn't want to go left. And for me, it actually launched the lowest out of between blue, orange, and white. It actually launched the lowest, and it's counterbalanced. So any head that you put that in, it's going to make or any driver you put together with that shaft, it's going to make the head feel a little bit lighter. And I actually messed with this just a touch. I hit probably like 4 balls with this combo at the range, and I really liked it, because I switched between this and like Ventus Black, just because it's a high launching head. I wanted something to launch it lower, and it was amazing how much heavier the head felt with Ventus Black. And it's probably only like 2 swing weight points, or maybe 3. Again, I'd have to, when I get the head back, I'll know exactly. But the Tensei AV Raw Orange, I think, being counterbalanced, taking away a little bit of that head weight, and you know, at the same length as everything else, while still being, for me, lower launching and lower spinning, I think it's a great combo in that head. So I would set that one up kind of -1 degree and flat, and then 10.5 head set at -1 and flat, so the face is just a little bit open. And I think that that raw orange just makes that head play more normal, because I don't play a super heavy swing weight with anything. I mean, I'm pretty much D2 for most of my bag, other than like wedges. I think wedges I get into like D3, D4. But, you know, even driver, which I know is that D2 is pretty light, I pretty much play D2 through everything. So, you know, the Max head definitely stood out as something heavy for me. So I think throwing orange in there is a great combo. It lowers the launch a little bit, takes some spin off, and I think overall for me, just a really good combo in that head. Could be something that, you know, that on the course, you know, plays really well. So that one I'm pretty excited about as well. I think that's just the little bit of, I won't call it the Bryson in me, but let's just call it the little bit of mad scientist I have in my head. I think that's a really good kind of combination, and it makes sense in my head for why I'm doing it. So yeah, G425 Max, Tensei AV Raw Orange 65X, or yeah, they make it the TX version. I have the TX version here actually that I'd probably use because I don't think I'm going to go get another one, but the TX does play a little more stout, I feel like, than the standard X. So, but overall, like I said, the big thing is the counterbalance with that one. So. Yeah, then the next one, the Ping G425 LST, which is probably the driver I'm hitting the best right now. And it's weird because I like I said, I like the LST. I like the idea of it. It's a little lower spinning. It's definitely a flatter launch. But it's interesting that I've hitting that one better than Max, because I thought for sure I'd hit Max better. It would be, you know, just because it's a more forgiving head. I like the look of a bigger head, all that. I thought I would hit that one better. But LST's just been a really good driver for me. So I think LST for me on that one, it is a flatter launch. I don't hit it near as high. Again, even with the 10.5 head, it's substantially lower launching and spinning than G425 Max. For that, I think I go Ventus Red 6X. And Ventus Red is one that I've messed around with a little more and more, and I did it before it was cool with Adam Scott and Justin Thomas. I did it last summer. I was playing Ventus Red in my Sim Max for a little bit, and I messed around with it in a couple other heads, but it's really, you know, as much as they say Ventus Red is a high launching shaft, it's really not. I'd call it mid to mid high, and it's fairly low spin. I would say it's kind of mid high launch and mid low spin, but Ventus Red's really good. It's got the velo core, so it's, you know, like blue and black. It's super consistent, super accurate. And I think in that LST head, it would add just a little bit of loft, you know, it add just a little bit of height, which I don't mind because I'm hitting that pretty flat, but add just a little bit of height, a little bit of trajectory there. It would feel really good because that thing, you know, when you do swing that, it has that lively feel. It has a little kick and impact compared to blue and black, you know, but it's still got velo core. It's going to go straight. It's going to still help you on those mishits. So I think combination-wise with LST, that's a really good combo. And like I said, for other people, you know, LST may not launch as low as it does for me, but for me, I think something that just raises that height a little bit. Even like I said, the 10.5 head, it's still a little lower launching. So, you know, Ventus Red in there, I think is going to be another combo. Like that's one of those ones where I kind of look at a couple of them where they really stand out to me, and this is one of them. I was hitting the LST also with just the standard tour shaft in it, the Ping tour shaft, the 65. And even that's actually pretty good. You know, that's based off typically a UST or an Autola shaft. But like I said, I think Ventus Red would be a good upgrade from there. And like I said, the stability of that velo core in it is still going to, you know, add some, you know, a little forgiveness when you do hit it, you know, on the toe or on the toe or the heel. So, yeah, 425 LST, Fujikura Ventus Red 6X. So those two, kind of excited to get back and hit. Like I said, I know one of the guys at the office is hitting them right now. I'm going to have to definitely steal them back. So the next one we go to is the Cobra. So Cobra, I think, is going to have a big year. The interesting thing is the Rad Speed. So just the Rad Speed, not the XB, but just the actual Rad Speed is probably the lowest launching driver I've hit this year so far. I don't think I've hit anything else as low as that and as flat as that. And for a lot of players, I know that's really good. For me, I think the one that came to the office was it a 10.5? I don't remember what loft it was. It might be a 9.5 or 9. But either way, it's super low. It flies just really flat. And for that there, like I definitely need something to help get that ball in the air. But I don't want, you know, I also don't want something that's just going to go, you know, easy to like just, you know, flip it left either. I want it basically something that's going to stable, hit it really high to add some carry to it. And for me, it's interesting because here I'm going KBS, the TD, Category 4 60X, which I think Category 4 is X, but they've got a little different standardization for going with the with their weights and flexes. But for me, the KBS TD, I think, is kind of touted as a little bit of a kind of, you know, mid to mid-low launching shaft with low spin. And for me, it's probably one of the highest launching shafts I have in my collection of shafts. It's probably really close to one of the higher ones. But it just does want to go straight. Like, it doesn't really, you know, it's easy to turn over to hit it straight. It doesn't really want to draw. It doesn't really want to fade. It just kind of goes straight. And for me, like I said, for whatever reason, I launched the thing super high. So I think putting it in the Rad Speed head, which is, again, one of the lowest spinning head or lowest launching heads, the TD doesn't seem to spin a ton. So I think adding it to that head, it's still going to help get the ball up, but it's not going to add any spin or a bunch of spin to it. So I think distance-wise, it'll still be really good. And like I said, it wants to go straight for the most part. So I don't think I'm going to have to worry about, you know, going to something soft and whippy and super, you know, tip soft that I may have to worry about, you know, the thing going left on me. Like I said, I think it'll just go straight. That one there is kind of a real, that's kind of a real Bryson-ish, which is figures it's Cobra, kind of thought to it of how that would work. And again, for whatever reason, the TD series just launches really high for me. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just, you know, my release or whatever. But again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just you got to find the right head for it. And I think this Rad Speed is probably the right head to go in it for me. So if you're somebody who hits a really high ball, Rad Speed is definitely worth looking at, because like I said, for me, it's probably the lowest launching driver that I've hit this year. So there's probably, I'm trying to think of what else would even be low, you know, could be lower, but that for me is probably the flattest driver I've hit all year. So, but yeah, KBS TD, and it'd be interesting because I wonder what other people, you know, how they view the TD line of shafts. Because like I said, for me, it's, you know, the highest launching probably on the wall behind me, but you know, for other people, maybe it is more mid-launch or lower launching. But for me, I think it will work really well in that Rad Speed. I don't have to worry about it really going left or right. It's pretty much just going to promote a pretty straight ball flight. So now the other Cobra driver is the Rad Speed XB, which is the kind of the last year's Extreme. So the bigger, more forgiving, higher launching, a little higher spinning driver, which I think I really like. I hit it, you know, hitting XB versus standard Rad Speed. It was amazing, the difference between the two. XB was super high launch. It carried forever. Didn't get an absolute ton of roll out of it, but you know, like I said, it carried forever. Went a long ways. Went pretty high. And for that, I was like, I need something to really lower that, because I feel like this Rad Speed XB and G425 Max are probably the two higher launching heads that I've hit. You know, the Mizuno ST-X is probably right close to that, but it may be a little less. But for that one, I've got a different shaft anyway. But I think this one, you know, the XB is where I throw Ventus Black. I think Ventus Black is basically going to add a bunch of, you know, going to lower that launch, going to make that thing a little more flat, take some of that spin off, while still adding a bunch of stability to a head that's already really, really stable. The XB was super easy to hit. I thought it was super straight. When I played it back in the fall, and even into the kind of the winter, as long as I could play. I think I played right before Christmas, but that one there, like I said, it went really straight. It was super easy to hit. I was really impressed with how easy it was and how straight it was, while still being pretty darn long. I thought the Rad Speed was just a hair longer for me on that day, but I think I was just, you know, getting a little more roll out of it. But I think you add that Ventus Black into that head, and it flattens that out, takes some spin off, and you could have a real bomber there. And then, like I said, you add some stability to a club head that's already really stable. So I think that could be a real point and shoot type, you know, type driver setup for anybody who kind of hits a mid launch, you know, kind of hits a mid ball anyway. I think putting that low launch shaft and that high launch head, that high launch forgiving head, could be a real interesting setup. So I'm pretty excited to kind of try that one as well. It's just, you know, like I said, you know, come and think about it, and you know, after seeing what I did with it on the course, and then if I could just lower the launch a little bit, you know, I think I could add a few more yards to it, and doing that with Ventus Black could definitely. So I'd go Ventus Black 6X on that. And, you know, that's a whole lot of shaft. That thing takes a little bit of work. So I think, you know, like I said, the high launch there would make up for me not being able to generate probably as much ball speed as I could with Black. And that's just because it's a stouter profile. But yeah, that could be a really interesting combo that they kind of neutralize each other out to equal a bunch of distance and go really straight. So that one, I'm kind of excited to hit. I think it'd be kind of a cool little Frankenstein type project. I used to kind of go for that stuff back in the day, where I'd look for high launch heads, 10 and a half, 11 and a half degree heads, and put like, pretty low launching, heavier shafts in them. And, let's take away the heavy and just put a low launching, low spinning shaft into a high launching head. So Rad Speed XB, Fujikura Venice Black 6X could be a really cool combo. I'm kind of excited to try that one too. So that one's near the top of the list, this for me. So next we'll get into what I think are going to be, two of the more underrated drivers this year. I think actually the last four are all, I think, going to be underrated drivers, which is the Srixon ZX5, which I've hit the 5 and the 7, and we'll talk about the 7 in a minute, but I've hit the 5 and the 7, and the 5 I think is really good. It's a, for a lower price point driver, I believe it's like either $399 or $450. It's like $100 cheaper than a lot of the big OEM drivers out there. The ZX5 is pretty darn forgiving. It's pretty easy to hit. It's kind of a mid-high launch. It does spin a little bit, especially compared to its ZX7 brother, but the ZX5 is overall a really good driver. I think really underrated. I think if it's one of those ones that if you go in and just try it, you'll be pleasantly surprised at how well it performs compared to everything else out there. I think it stands toe-to-toe with, all the big name stuff out there this year. Like I said, the only thing I wish I could change on it, I wish I could make it a little more quiet. It's a little loud, but, other than that, I mean, it's got a great ball speed on it. It really feels like the ball jumps off the face. And it's a little, like I said, it's kind of a mid-high launch. So for this, I don't want to lose all the height on that one. I want to keep some of that around. So I'm going to go with that Nippon Regio Formula MB Plus, which I think I just talked about last week. But it's kind of molded after the Modus Tour 125, which is kind of a mid to mid-high launch, but stiff handle section in it. So it's going to have a good amount of control. Again, it's probably one of the smoothest shafts that you can find to hit. So I think adding it to that head, again, I'm not trying to take away a ton of loft on there. I think if I can kind of maintain that while still adding some really good feel, and also, a driver shaft that, again, kind of feels like it does kick at impact. It's easy to load. It feels good unloading. And I think pairing that up with a head that feels like it has a ton of ball speed as well is just a really good combination. But yeah, that MBX I think would be a solid, is going to be, I think, a solid option with that ZX5 head. I hit like 2 drives with it already, that combo. And I really liked it. I kind of was at the end of the bucket. I didn't feel like I felt like I was kind of losing some swings at the end. So I didn't love I just kind of slapped it together to hit 2. And overall, I really like kind of where it was at right there. And I think hitting some more balls with it, I think is going to, add some pretty cool results. It's a pretty stable shaft too, and that's a really forgiving head. And like I said, I think both combined to, feeling like they're going to add some ball speed. I think you can, feel like you're going to get a few more yards out of that thing. So, ZX5, Nippon Regio Formula MB Plus 65X would be, I think, a really good combo, and probably a great feeling combo, because that head, you can really feel, both that and the ZX7, you can really feel the ball compress off that face. And like I said, that shaft is uber smooth. So it'd be, probably one of the best feeling combos out of this whole list, which would be pretty awesome. So definitely what I'm going to try here. I'm basically going to try all these, but like 2, because I have all the shafts other than 2. So that's ZX5. I think ZX7. Now, ZX7's a little flatter ball flight, a little lower spinning, and it's more the kind of the player's driver. It's a little more compact when you look at it. But that one there, launches a little lower. For that one there, I'm going to toss in, I think Fujikura Motore X F3 6X. And the Motore X F3, the Motore line, I think is, it kind of got launched right as COVID hit, and people kind of forgot about it, I think. I think people are starting to realize it now that you're seeing it in kind of like, Cobra's got it, Mizuno's got it. Like, it's coming in some stock options, which I think people are going to start hitting it and start realizing it's a really good shaft. But the F3 version is the slightly higher launching version. It's kind of mid-high launch. I'd say it's a little higher than Ventus Red. But it's one of those that, again, it's got a great kick at impact. Like, when it gets down to the bottom of the swing, it really feels like it's just, it's launching forward. And throwing that in with that ZX7 head, which is, again, a little more a flatter launching, I think it'll add a little height there, get that ball up while still, giving you a bunch of ball speed. And it's a pretty darn consistent shaft. I mean, it goes pretty straight. It's a little easier to turn over. You can draw it a little bit easier than, say, the Ventus line of stuff, like the Ventus Red. But I think with the ZX7 being a pretty neutral head, or even sliding that heavy weight out into the toe to add a little fade to it, I think you can basically kind of counteract each other. And again, like I said, I think the feeling of that thing just being stupid hot, the combination of the head and the shaft would just be really good. And I think that you could produce some really good drives with that. Like I said, you add a little bit of height with the shaft. It's a pretty mid to mid-low launcher. So, that combination, I think you add some height and the ball could really go. And it's a low spin head. So, even if the F3 spins a little bit more, I don't think it's enough to really hurt anything or lower the distance in any way. So the Motori X F3 could be a really solid performer in that ZX7. And I'll definitely get that out as well because, I have a Motori X F3 and I have the ZX7 head. So those will be going out. We will definitely get those out there and try it. But those two heads, like I said, I think really underrated. I think they're not going to sell as many as they should this year. And like I said, the next two, the Mizuno stuff, I think the last four heads here are heads that if you haven't tried ever, like if you haven't tried last year's or this year's or whatever, like you definitely should put them on your list to try because I think at the price point, they will really shock you on how good they are. But yeah, the ZX7 Motori, Fujikura Motori X F3 6X could be a real monster of a club. So the next one would be Mizuno and the ST, the ST-Z, which we'll talk about first, and the ST-X. But both heads, I think, really good. I know the fairway's got a ton of talk going on right now in the online. But again, I think a more inexpensive head. It's at like a $400 price point or $430, something like that. It's well under $5. But you're getting a ton of performance. They sound good. They feel good. They look really high quality. The fit and finish is really solid on them. They're going to hang with anything else out there, which is pretty awesome. So the ST-Z, which is the more neutral ball flight of the two, it's basically set up to be a really neutral high MOI head, and it does. It just goes straight. I had that thing out on the range, and it did it. It just doesn't it doesn't want to fade really. It doesn't want to draw. It just wants to hit straight balls, and it's kind of a pretty mid-launching head. I wouldn't call it. It could maybe borderline in that mid-high area, but I think it's true mid. Doesn't seem to spin a lot, which is really good. And for this one here, I think the ST-Z would pair really well with a Mitsubishi Tensei CK Pro Blue 60TX. And again, the TX stuff, that's just what their X is. It's called TX. I don't have the club head speed to really truly chase down TX flex shafts, but it's just what they make. And I have it here on the wall. But I think again, this is a shaft that pretty much mid-launch, it may bring that flight down just a touch, which I was initially a little worried about, but I think it'll be fine. Like I said, that head is, it's pretty mid-launch, but it borderlines on mid-high. I think the CK Pro Blue would bring that down just a hair and maybe, take off a little bit of spin, even though this head is pretty low spin. But I think the sound and feel paired with the CK Pro Blue with that boron tip section just would be like it'd be super solid, in terms of the feel and the sound. It would just be one of those kind of like hitting a forged iron compared to a cast. I think it would just feel and sound amazing. And the CK Pro Blue I really like. It's got a really stiff handle section, mid-launch. Like I said, it's got that really just solid feel to it. It's smooth. The feel on it's a little. I want to say it feels more stout, but it's still super smooth. But that there, it's for me, it's pretty neutral shaft. If I get kind of really crappy and the club path is bad, I can definitely hit it left. But also, if I put a decent swing on it, thing's going to go straight, and that's what the CK Pro Blue pretty much does. If you need to turn it over, you can. If you need to hit a fade, you can. But for the most part, it's a straight ball. And I think paired up with that ST-Z head, which is pretty much a straight driver head, that would be really good. And I think the launch should be slightly lower, and for that, maybe, I guess you could click it up just a touch. I wouldn't really want to because I think that Mizuno head, visually with me, can make it look closed even when it's not. If I raise the loft too much, but I think even playing a 10.5 head just where it's at, it would be totally fine. So that one there, I'm really excited to try it, only because I think the feel and sound and all that would just be spectacular with it. It'd be fun to play. So that one there would be really solid. And then ST-X, so Mizuno ST-X, which is the more high launch draw version. And it does. It launches higher, and it definitely wants to turn over. The weight in the back is slid over a little bit to the heel. But again, it's still got a pretty darn good sound and feel. Both the Mizunos do. And for this one, I think it would be kind of more of a Frankenstein thing, because typically I throw out the draw heads because I don't need help hitting it left. I can pick out the holes on most courses where I've hit it left more times than I ever want to imagine. But this one here I think could be fun just to toss in the Project X Hazardous Smoke Green 65.65. So putting in the X there, I think just putting in a really stiff shaft that is really hard to turn over. Really, it would just kind of counteract the draw on that head. You'd still launch it high with no spin on it, but that really stiff shaft I think would counteract some of that draw for me, and you'd be able to kind of hit it straight and not worry about hitting it left as much. And it would kind of turn it into more of a neutral head. Now, again, that head launches pretty high. Hazardous Green launches pretty low. So again, I think it's kind of a good combination of a high launching head, low spinning, low launching shaft that doesn't want to turn over really easy. And this one here could be like a total wow, this is amazing, or it could turn into just a total mess. Like, you just don't know. But just thinking about it and the profile of the shaft and how that head plays, I think it could be something that could be sneaky good, and nobody would ever think twice about playing that thing. So. Like I said, the great feel there. Now that has a smoke green is a little more harsh. It's not the ultra smoothest shaft in the world, but it's not meant to be. It's meant to be super stiff and pretty low launching and low spinning. And for guys like me with a really quick tempo, it's built for that. So I think sticking it in a head that's built for somebody fighting a slice and all that, it could be really interesting. I'd be pretty excited to play that. I think hitting it low heel would be the shot to really think what it does, because the head is going to want to close and help kind of move that shot back, where the shaft is going to want to just kind of not flex and keep the face open, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. And I think it could be a kind of a really cool combination. So Mizuno ST-X with Project Hazardous Smoke Green 65X, and if you did that, of course, you'd have to go the Gamma PVD Green, because why wouldn't you? So, but those would be kind of the drivers. Those are the ones that I've hit recently. I've talked about on the shows. I think they're going to be kind of cool combos. It'd be interesting when you see me post something on Instagram about this. Let me know what you think. Like, what do you think about what do you think about these kind of options, and where would you put shafts and things like that. So, but it's kind of fun. When you're sitting here in the winter, especially in the north, where shoveling snow is pretty much the closest thing you have to a golf swing. Things like this are fun to kind of just play around with, and fun little projects to just go through. So I kind of like this list. I think there's some really cool things. I don't think I'd throw it in there just to throw them in there. I think I had a good reasoning for each one. So it was pretty fun. I enjoyed doing it. Hopefully next week I'll have some more stuff to review. Like I said, I'm looking at my thing. I've got the new Fuji Vista Pro stuff, which I know isn't necessarily on everybody's radar because it's a little more of a price point product. But from the looks and the feel, the waggle test, I'm pretty excited to hit it, actually. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I have the hybrid, the iron shaft, and the driver shaft, and then I've got the Cobra, the Rad Speed Big Tour, so that deeper faced head. I've got that sitting over there ready to go, as well as the Humna TR21 Big LB. I think it's LB, the deeper faced Big 3-wood as well. So I've got that to hit, and then I've got the new Taylormade irons, the Sim2 Max, or Sim2 OS and Sim2, so those as well. And then I've also got some Kirkland wedges. I was at Costco like 2 weeks ago, and they had a whole pallet full, and it was like, you know what, let's, I know it'll be something new. Everybody's already reviewed them and all that, but it'll be fun to kind of see what happens and trick those things out. They look better than I thought when I first saw them in the package, and I pulled them out of the package. There's some things I don't like, so we'll get into those after I hit them. But yeah, that's all I got this week. Again, if you could subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast, click and subscribe. Maybe give us a decent rating, whether it's 5 stars on Apple, whatever. Would really appreciate it. It goes a long way for the analytics and all that. And then yeah, if you want to hang out, follow me on Instagram at Club Junkie Pod. That would be awesome as well. So hopefully you guys have a good rest of the week, good weekend, and we'll talk to you guys next week.